Welcome everyone. My name is Samantha Oakley from ALA's Public Programs Office. I'm pleased to introduce today's webinar, Bigger on the Inside, Programming for Small Spaces. Before we start, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is presented by ALA's Public Programs Office with support from ALA's Cultural Communities Fund. To learn more about the Cultural Communities Fund or make a contribution, visit ala.org/ccf. Hopefully many of you are familiar with Programming Librarian, a website of ALA's Public Programs Office. We have a lot of program ideas and an online learning library full of free webinars just like this one. Finally, a couple of notes about our virtual classroom. Only our presenter has microphone access, but you are welcome to type your questions or comments in the chat box. We will have time for Q&A at the end. Also, if you have any technical issues, please send a private message to Brian Russell, aka PPO Admin. To do so, hover over PPO Admin in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and click Start Private Chat. Now, I'd like to introduce our presentation and speaker for this afternoon. Our presenter today, Hope Decker, was the director of an 800-square-foot library and assisted in a library transformation that led to moving to a larger space. She is now the member library liaison and youth services consultant for the Pioneer Library System in New York. Hope is a passionate believer in the power of small libraries to positively impact their communities and is delighted to be able to provide support to the 42, mostly small and rural, libraries of the Pioneer Library System. We first saw Hope Decker's presentation on small space programming at the 2017 conference of the Association for Rural and Small Libraries, which was held in beautiful St. George, Utah. We were impressed by her energy and out-of-the-box thinking and invited her to share her ideas with Programming Librarian. Thank you to both Hope and ARSL for making today's webinar possible. To learn more about ARSL, please visit their website, arsl.info. And with that, I'll turn things over to Hope.
Welcome. I'm glad you're here, and I'm so excited to talk to you about small space programming. Today I'm going to offer some practical tips on making the most of your space and some tricks on how to make your space seem bigger. I'm also going to give you lots and lots of ideas on programs that you can do in small spaces, specifically STEM programming, self-directed programming or passive programming, and adult programming. And I hope that you gain a fresh look at your space and you come up with some new possibilities for your space. I also hope that you come away with a couple of new program ideas. As Samantha said, I am now the member library liaison and youth services consultant for the Pioneer Library System. You can see in purple where the Pioneer Library System is in upstate New York. It's 42 mostly small and rural libraries, independent, in over 4 counties. Before that, I was the director of this library. This is the first building that we were in. It's a garage. It's 800 square feet, 800 square feet of wonderfulness. These young ladies are sitting on the floor behind the door because there is no room to sit down in this library. You can see on the left that that's a picture of the inside of the library. It was dark, cluttered, cramped. This was before I learned the importance of weeding and decluttering. On the right side is our new space. I had at that point learned about weeding and decluttering. That happened, that's 6,000 square feet, and that happened because the community really wanted the library to have a bigger space, and everybody came together and made it happen. The voters also approved a bigger budget for us, and it was all because of the relationships we made in the small space. And this webinar is going to be based on the small space lessons that I learned. And as you can see, I made a lot of mistakes in the process. So small space strategies, making the most of the space you have. The most important thing is building relationships. This picture on the left is a picture of a 3D printer. The Phelps Community Memorial Library has a 3D printer, actually has a makerspace, but it's a small library and they're making the most of the equipment that they have. An entrepreneur approached the director, Leah Hamilton, about making a prototype for a sandal that could be used by people with disabilities. The 3D printer that they had was too small. The platform print bed was just not small enough to make an actual life-size print of the sandal that he wanted to make. So the Phelps Library found the resources to get a bigger 3D printer. I know 3D printers are kind of out of the budget for a lot of small libraries, but this was a really clever way to involve an entrepreneur in the community and get people to use their equipment. The Phelps Library also has Lego robotics kits, and they worked with the Workforce Development Agency in their county to develop a workforce training program that taught how to follow directions by using the Lego robotics directions. Leah makes a lot of these kind of connections, and they lead to really interesting places, and I think that's what's so exciting about building relationships in our community. You just never know where they're going to lead. At the Cohocton Library, we had a lot of leftover wood from a building project, and we had a Boy Scout troop that really wanted to help out. So I asked the Boy Scouts to cut the wood in and make them into kits to be made into bat houses. The bat houses had specific measurements that had to be followed, so the Boy Scouts did all that prep work. They also put the kits together, so there were 12 little bundles of wood. The participants brought hammers and drills, and I bought screws and nails for the people to build with. I should have bought earplugs though, because it was really loud. So 12 hammers in a small space is just loud. That's a free tip there for you. I think this is my favorite slide. You are awesome. You guys do great work. And you should be kind to yourself. That's my second very important tip. Because the work you do is so important and vital to your community, be kind to yourself. If you're stressed out, overworked, overwrought, grumpy, you're not going to be able to serve your community in the best way possible, and you're not going to feel good about what you're doing. So please, be kind. Okay, so let's get to some practical ideas here. At the Avon Library, they have radiators right in front of the window. You can see that they have a bench with holes in it. It's a brilliant way to provide seating in a space that wouldn't normally be used. At the Walworth Seeley Library on the right, you can see that they have this little table right by the window. This was actually a shelf. They took out the shelves and bought low-profile, small stools, and now it's a seating place. So in these libraries, people don't have to sit on the floor like they did in Cohocton. You can carve out a corner. The Williamson Library on the left is a little bit bigger than the other library on the right, but both carved out a little small space for their teen section. On the right, you can see this bricks. That's actually just wallpaper. They put up some nice lighting and a chalkboard and a mirror, tall table, and you've got a teen section that gets used. And this is literally right in a corner in their stacks. Quiet spaces can be important for some of our patrons, and sometimes that's really hard when you have a small space and you don't have study rooms like they do on the left. So some libraries are getting disposable earplugs for their patrons, or setting aside certain hours of the day, maybe the last hour of the day, for patrons who need it quiet. Decluttering. This is a hard learned lesson for me, but decluttering is essential to making your space look bigger. It also, I have found, makes work a lot more efficient. Your desk may or may not look like these desks. Your circ area might look like this. Sometimes when we're in our space, we don't even see the clutter anymore, so I would invite you to take a fresh look at your circulation area, the work area, anything that's seen by the public, and do a little decluttering if need be. The one-touch rule has helped me a lot. If you get a piece of paper like mail, the idea is to just touch it once. So when the mail comes in, I look at it, I open it, I read it, and I recycle it, or I file it, do something with it. Honestly, I aspire to the one-touch rule. I usually touch it 3 or 4 times, but I'm not finding that I have these huge stacks of paper like I used to. How about displays that attract attention? I love this library's displays. Otis on the left is the library turtle, and here are his recommendations. They also have winter books and a fun snowman display. Even if you don't have a great display table like this, you can still carve a small corner out and have some great displays. Other ideas. Just changing things up. If people are crowded around the DVD section all the time, it's probably time to move some furniture around the DVDs, or maybe change the location of the shelf. This library made a DVD section by taking the 4 shelves and forming a little square. They put the chairs in the middle so people can sit and browse. And then on the outside there are new books and other displays. So it's like a little DVD room. You'll notice that the shelves aren't super high. This library is aspiring to lower all their shelves so that they have a nice line of sight, and it really does make your space feel more open. So if you're getting rid of all these shelves, you've got to weed. Other tricks to make your small space seem larger is lightening up the room. Paint does wonders, and you can paint paneling if you prep it properly, and you can just ask at the hardware store how to do that. But I have painted paneling and it is durable. It'll stay on for years. Lighting is essential. So I know we have small budgets sometimes in small libraries, but lighting is worth the money. If one of your patrons has migraines or gets seizures, flickering lights can really cause a lot of problems. So please change your light bulbs, get better lighting. Also windows, and I think this is something that is overlooked a lot of times. If you have curtains, you can take them down. If there is an awning or some kind of overhang, if that can be removed, that lets more light in. Before we know it, bushes can grow up over the windows or ivy. If you take those down, it adds more light, and sometimes we just don't see it. Shelves, I have been guilty of this, putting a shelf in front of a window. I now feel that my windows are much more important, and the light is much more important than having every single James Patterson book on the shelf. So making room for programming. Let's look at some interesting places to put oh, sorry, that's the wrong section. Okay, storage. This is a beautiful cabinet that can be used in a multi-purpose room. This room is used by all kinds of meetings and programs, and the shelves, the cabinets look beautiful. Underneath, you can see a long brown trunk or container. It is used to store storytime things. Their garbage can is matches. Because everything matches and really looks beautiful in this room, it creates the illusion of a bigger space. And a lot of us have to use rooms for multiple purposes. In this room, these chairs can be pushed back very easily. The shelf is on wheels, and they bring out tables that are on wheels, and I have used those tables before. One person can flip them down. In this library in Macedon, they have a lot of shelves on specially built platforms that have sturdy wheels on them. Those shelves can be moved very easily. This library shares their meeting space with the town government, and the town gets priority over the meeting space. So even if they have something scheduled, sometimes they have to move out because the town wants the space. So they've become very flexible, and if that happens, they just start moving shelves back, and they've got a programming space. These chairs are brilliant. They're from Brodart. They have wheels on the front. They're big, nice, comfy chairs, but they are easily moved. You just lift from the back and that handle, and the wheels enable the chairs to move very quickly and easily. Easy to move props are also helpful. You can see on the left that there's a shelf. In each of the cubes, the Storytime librarian puts her Storytime props in there, and she moves the shelf into the teen section for Storytime. Allen's Hill is very small. They serve 300 people, and they're really out in the middle of nowhere. So they take Storytime to the beach at one of our lakes. This foldable wagon can go on the sand. She'll roll up the octopus rug and fold up the wagon, put her Storytime props in her car, and off she goes. And she's got Saturday Storytime at the beach. Whoops. When I was in Cohocton, it was imperative that we formed relationships with the school and the Lions Club so that we had places to do our programs. On the left, there's some kids doing an activity in the school gym/auditorium. And on the right, we're in the Lions Club Pavilion having a luau in conjunction with the school. We could not do this type of program in the 800 square foot building that you saw. Carts are a great way to have some activities right in your library. On the left, they took an old book cart, put activities in plastic totes, and people can check out those activities. There are tech toys like Ozobots and Little Bits, and building things in there like Legos, and I think there's a maze there. So that's for use at the library. On the right, that colorful cart has lots of different activities. Each drawer has a different activity, from brain teasers and coloring sheets to little experiments and challenges, STEM challenges and crafts that they can make. The librarian changes out the activities, and each drawer has a picture on Velcro, and the picture can be changed out really easily. So here's some off-the-wall program ideas. Of course, there's bulletin boards. If you have bulletin board space, there are so many things you can do, and I'd be really curious to hear if any of you have some good interactive bulletin boards, not just telling people things, but starting some kind of conversation or activity. You could do a kindness board like these libraries did this summer. One of them just had encouraging, inspirational things in the envelopes. The other library had kindness challenges that people could take and do. How about your sidewalks? We often don't think of using as sidewalks, but you could have an art gallery out there. I have seen libraries do obstacle courses for the kids on the sidewalks. This is a great project that everyone in the library can do, young and old. You just need square pieces of paper with a quarter circle drawn on them. Put out some markers and let people go to town. If they put them up themselves, they might form circles or other interesting patterns. A lot of these projects are linked in the document that's attached under the resources that says Build a Bigger World Program Ideas. Or not Build a Better World, bigger on the inside. Interactive walls, you know about chalk paint probably. What I didn't know is they also make magnetic paint. So you could paint a section of the wall in the teen section with magnetic paint and put up magnetic poetry. How about the end caps? The first picture of the snowman is a homemade dress a snowman flannel graph, and there's a big piece of felt on the end of her shelf. The next one is store-bought, awesome gears and maze end cap. And then the other one here on the right is an end table with a shelf on top of it right at the end of the shelf. And this is a seed library. How about your window ledges? You could put puzzles out on the window or a box with, here at the Phelps Library, they have boxes on their window ledges, little maker activities with all of the supplies and some books from the collection that support the activity. Here you have doodling with pens and paper and a Zentangle book. There's all these little discoveries that your patrons can have. I would caution, though, if you start putting a lot of these things out, take a critical look at your library and make sure it's not getting too cluttered. It's kind of a balance, isn't it? Windows. In Cohocton, our patrons sometimes would paint the window. It was a storefront, so we had lots of window real estate. One Christmas, we had the younger patrons put their handprints up on the front door and they made a wreath. In Arcade, patrons this month have colored snowmen and mittens and been part of their window display. Because we're small, sometimes we have not so big staff. Sometimes it's just you at the library. And so a lot of us rely on passive programs, but I like the term self-directed programs. There's really nothing passive about it. I found that self-directed programs are most successful when you start with really clear directions. I rewrote all the directions for the activities that I found. I listed the materials and then went through in my head step by step what to do next and made sure that they were very, very clear. Then I would provide examples of the finished product. The supplies would be organized on the table, labeled what the supply is, and sometimes how many of each item they needed. And then I think the most important thing is testing it out. And as I test it out, I think, can little fingers do this? Is this too frustrating? Does this make sense? And if it passes the test it out test, then it's an activity. It's a passive activity. Paracord bracelet was not actually passive, but it's such a good example of testing it out. I did this program and I did test it out once. I made an example of it. I found that making the beginning part of the bracelet was confusing and it kind of was hard, but I did the program anyway, and when I was teaching people how to do it, I completely forgot how to do the beginning part. Luckily, we had some teenagers who knew how to do it, and they took over and saved the day. Self-directed programs that are easy and inviting can be a wonderful addition to a table or even a section of your circulation desk. The Cheerios bird feeder is super simple. When I was going through it, the directions said to use yarn, but I was thinking about how hard it would be for anybody, including little kids, to put yarn through Cheerios, so I changed it to pipe cleaners. And I put the directions out, pipe cleaners, and a bowl of cereal, and there you have it. Little self-directed program. I love the look of the beads on the table. I don't care what age you are. If you see all those colorful beads, don't you want to make a snowman or a snowflake? Oh, I love, love, love this program. And there is a link in the resources document. This is Colorful Zentangle, super simple, and though it looks like a kids program, when we did it at our library, all ages participated and enjoyed this. Okay, so it's really easy. You take a piece of cardboard, cut little cuts along the edges, randomly string yarn. It's got to be thick string or yarn through those cuts so that you're making little compartments. Take your tin foil, put it over the cardboard, flatten it out, fold the edges underneath, and again, there are links to this. And what you'll find as you flatten out your tin foil is that there are nice little shapes, compartments, where people can do different doodly designs with permanent color markers like Sharpies. It's so much fun, and the colors are really vibrant because it's done on tin foil. Outside crafts, you can do nature crafts. If you have any space at all to put a folding table out, this is a great place to do crafts. These libraries have patron reviews. This is a nice interactive program that can help other patrons. The box on the left is a really pretty little cardboard box where people can write books, titles, and author little review about a book they liked. And if you're going through the stacks and you don't know what book to read next, you can kind of look through the box and see if any of the reviews spark your interest. And I love the old due date slip on the right. I think that was used for a bulletin board. Early literacy, really simple. A container of buttons and pipe cleaners on the table, and the kids can practice fine motor skills. I've also seen colanders with pipe cleaners. It's a great way for kids to develop fine motor skills. And kids love sensory activities. We tend to sometimes shy away from messy things, but just cutting open a pumpkin in October, putting it in a plastic bin and letting the kids feel the squishy insides and take the seeds out is a great sensory activity, and your little patrons will appreciate it. How about magnetic poetry on metal shelves? This is done in the teen section, and this takes up no room at all, and the teens can add their 2 cents to the shelves. Eye bobbing, have you guys seen this? This is so cool. It's whimsical, it's fun, it's a low impact form of fun graffiti. I would suggest, if you do this program, using sticky tack so that the eyeballs will come off, not using glue or anything that's going to be permanent. But this is a thing, and if you go to eyebombing.com, you can see lots of examples of how people add these googly eyes to just everyday objects. It's really fun. So maybe for a program for your teens, you could give them a bunch of googly eyes and sticky tack, ask them to go find some things to eye bomb, and see what they come up with. Have them take pictures of it. You can upload it to the iBombing website or maybe your own website. Make a bulletin board display. I think it would be a lot of fun. The joy of discovery. I know a lot of us don't really like to do STEM programs because people think that, oh, I don't know enough about science, or it's messy or complicated. But think about it as an opportunity to give your patrons a chance to discover something and just enjoy it. There's a link to the STEM challenge on the left. It's basically just making molecules or shapes with gumdrops or marshmallows and toothpicks, just following the challenge cards, and super simple. And of course, because it's got candy, people love it. Okay, let's show the Cobra Weave exploding stick bomb video. There's going to be some audio, so be prepared. Ah, well, we didn't really see it, but so you weave these popsicle sticks together, and if you touch the end, it just explodes. It has a big wow factor. Kids love it. It is a little complicated to start, but I promise, try it out. Use jumbo popsicle sticks. Try it out. You'll get the hang of it, and if you don't think you can get it, show the video that's linked in the resources document, and I bet the kids can figure it out. But it's super fun. We had a Pi Day celebration on March 14th, 2015. We had 149 people come in our small town of 1,400. That's a lot of people to come to a celebration about math. And we had all these stations. Here are two of them. Pi is a mathematical concept. It is the ratio between a circle outside the circumference and the diameter. So they can do circle art. Very simple. Just put out a bunch of different colored circles of different sizes and see what people come up with. And as you can see, people of all ages wanted to create stuff, making a Pi bracelet, using pony beads and string, and just let them, each number corresponds to a color. Put the first, I don't know, 20 digits of Pi out and let people create a Pi bracelet. This is really simple and fun. When kids realize there's stuff in their water, it's kind of exciting. So if you have a local lake or pond or ocean, even a ditch that has water, there's life in it. So put a little water out on the table, some magnifying glasses, maybe some eyedroppers, and let kids look at it. If you have a microscope, all the better. Then you can really see some cool stuff. Everybody loves candy. You can make edible DNA with gumdrops and Twizzlers and toothpicks. Again, it'll be linked in the resources document. Or how about a candy rock cycle? That would be good for the library's rocks theme for summer. The rock cycle starts with sedimentary rocks, so you take 3 different starbursts, flatten them out, have wipes nearby so they can wash their hands after. When sedimentary rocks that are in layers undergo heat and pressure, they start to fold and form metamorphic rocks. More heat and pressure, the rock crystals melt, and when the crystals reform, you've got igneous rocks. However, I did not have means to microwave the igneous rock example, so I just told people to take it home. But the sedimentary and metamorphic rocks were a lot of fun, and the kids enjoyed that part. And I doubt that anybody actually took their starburst home to microwave it. I think it all got eaten before they left the library. I love color changing milk. You have probably seen this experiment before. Could we show that video now? You use whole fat milk and put drops of food coloring in it. That Q-tip has dishwashing soap in it, and you can see once you put the dishwashing soap in the milk, it makes the milk move. This is one of those experiments that has the wow factor, and I love doing it. Basically, if you think about washing dishes, if you have a greasy dish, the soap cuts through the grease. This soap in this experiment is making the grease or the fat move away from it. Very cool. Thank you. On the right, this cute little guy is building a structure out of marshmallows and toothpicks. After the kids are done building their structures, we shake the table to see which structures stand and which don't, which represents the earthquake. If you want to add a little extra interest to this experiment, you can have some of the kids build on clay and other kids build on Jello. And when the tables get shook to represent earthquakes, it's really interesting to see what happens to the structures on Jello especially. Everybody wants adult program ideas, including the adults that come to your library. So how do you find them? I have found when you go to Pinterest and you type something like adult library programs or teen library programs or teen crafts, you get a lot of the same things coming up time and time again. So I started using different keywords in my search, like retro crafts or vintage DIY projects or hipster projects or badass crafts. Those kind of things will, so start thinking about the crafts a little differently and what keywords you use, and I think you'll find some interesting things. And of course, finding out what your patrons want, asking them, people will come to you and say, hey, can we do a project on building cat castles? That is a book at Barnes & Noble, and I believe that's cardboard and wrapping paper. But you could have a cat castle adult program. Also, taking note of the books they check out. We had a book, Crafting with Cat Hair, where they actually felted with hair collected from their cats. I never did a program with that, though, but I thought it was really interesting. So another really great way to research adult programs is find out what's trending, because whatever is popular in the bookstore is probably going to be something that will interest your patrons. Also, look at fandoms like, this is just a display at Barnes & Noble. They've done all the work for us. There's The Walking Dead and Doctor Who, Star Wars, and there were other things in that display that I didn't know anything about. But if you do The Walking Dead party or watching party or Walking Dead crafts or Stranger Things, you'll get a whole new group of people that are interested in your programs. So what's trending? I just walked around craft stores to see what motifs were popular right now. Birds, feathers, arrows, deer with antlers, in other words, bucks. Also llamas, cacti, unicorns, mermaids, all popular. And if you do a craft or activity with these things, it's probably going to garner interest. So I looked at these things at Hobby Lobby, these decorative items, and I thought, oh, I could do that as a project. Another thing that is trending is macrame. Again, so if you're a child of the 70s like I am, You know how to macrame. I bet you have people in your community who can macrame. Rope is also popular. Succulents. These are actually plastic, but they're everywhere now. So doing terrariums or little dish gardens. In my local grocery store, they have terrarium supplies and succulents that you can buy. I think you have to be living under a rock not to realize that mason jars are trending. And also, I love these tiny little bottles. There's all kinds of cool stuff you could do with jars. So at this library, they do string art, and you can see they use the arrow motif. And even if you're patrons, they might not realize that arrows or bucks are a popular motif, but there's something about it that's fresh and interesting and appealing. This tiny library, this is the library that did the story time at the beach. They have a homesteaders club, basically because the director on the right is interested in homesteading. She has goats, so they had a cheese making class. They also have an herb garden. I brought some extra chives that I had. Other people brought their things, and throughout the summer you could take some herbs. They also have a basket of yarn that you can take if you want, crochet and knitting, crochet hooks, knitting needles that you can check out and borrow if you need a certain size. They had a worm composting class. We learned about how to make a worm bin or start a worm farm. And then afterwards, we set up this worm bin. Throughout the year, people brought their vegetable scraps, food for the worm, and if people wanted, they could take some worm compost afterwards, which is highly sought after. They also had a soap making class right in this tiny library. And the cool thing is they supported this class with a kit that could be checked out. So it had its own pot and the different supplies you need for soap making. So people can try it out without actually having to buy all that stuff. Bullet journals. How many of you have a bullet journal class or do bullet journaling? This is super popular. I have been to 3 different libraries that have done bullet journaling classes, and none of the people who ran it actually were experts at bullet journaling. So it's something that even if you don't know what it is, but people are asking for it, you can do it. What these libraries did was show a video, and there's a link in the document under resources. Show an introductory video on how to bullet journal. It's just a way to organize your to-do list, and it can be very pretty, like you can see on the right. At Avon, they have books to read and a stack of books, and as the person reads those books, she colors in the book. People do movies to watch, habit tracker where they check off every day that they do something like get 8 glasses of water or exercise. But it's very popular, and the 2 libraries that are pictured here both found the class is so popular that they want to do it again. They want to start a community of people who do this every so often, like every other month. They do it together. The librarians who did these classes are linked also in the resources document, and if you have questions, you can ask them. Again, they're not experts, but they tried it anyway. The Avon Library also did fairy gardens, super simple. Bring your own dish, and they bought the supplies to fill it. As you can see at the bottom, this is a picture of a shelf at Michael's. It's actually a whole aisle of fairy garden stuff, so it's obviously something that lots of people are interested in. And Michael's has a lot of projects that are displayed within their store among the shelves, so you can find lots and lots of good ideas at craft stores. So I did this weekend. It's alcohol ink on glass. These jars are from wheat yogurt, and it is the cutest little jar. The yogurt comes in a glass jar about the size of a baby food jar, but it's a much prettier jar. Alcohol ink is so simple. You just squirt it on the jar, or you can dab it on the jar, and it makes all these interesting colors. There's a lot you can do with it, and it's very easy. And you don't need a lot of it, so putting money out for the alcohol ink could be expensive at first, but it should last a while. And again, there's links in the resources for that program. How about pop-up cards? This is just a birthday cake pop-up card. There's a link for that in the resources page. It's so fun and so easy. Easy origami. Now, I find that origami is not easy when I read the directions in a book, but what the Geneva Library did was each table had a laptop with the directions, a YouTube video of the directions. So people would go from table to table, and they made 4 different projects. This whole program and the lessons that Kelsey learned, and also Kelsey's email if you have questions, are linked in the resources. So that's a takeaway program right there. So final parting thoughts. Don't be afraid to try something messy or complicated. If you hate messy, don't do it. Don't stress yourself out. But if you're a little on the fence, try it. Put a tarp down. The naked egg experiment is so much fun. You put an egg in a glass of vinegar. You let it set overnight, and the acetic acid, which is the vinegar, dissolves the calcium carbonate in the eggshell, and you get the membrane, and it's kind of rubbery. It's very cool, but this porous membrane will allow water to go in and out of it, and it's a great way to show osmosis. So you could put it in sugar water and then regular water and see if the egg gets bigger or smaller. It's so cool. I highly recommend it. The other project is meant to display something kind of complicated. It actually, upon reflection, is not that complicated. It's just a Valentine matchbook box, but you can see how I laid out all of the materials on a long table. I had the instructions. It was very clear. This made something, this wasn't complicated, but if it was complicated, this is a way to make it a lot easier. And I really do think we shy away sometimes from things that are complicated because we think it won't turn out. But with good directions and an example, you can do it. So again, it's all about building those important relationships. On the left is the school principal with some kids from school, and they came to the library when we first got it. It was a furniture store, and lots of people from the community helped us move the junk from the furniture store out. Here you see a guy taking the sign down. It was super exciting, and it was because we had put the work into building those relationships. And the last thing is planning for the future. And I mentioned this because it's something that I did not really do. When we were in the small space, we had a small budget, and I just kind of crossed my fingers and hoped nothing would ever go wrong with the building. But having a facilities plan for your building, even if you're small, is important, because if something goes wrong, you want to be prepared. So taking a look at your building and seeing if there are things that are going to be needed to be fixed down the line, or looking at your space and seeing if there are other uses in the future for different parts of your library, and being ready for that is so important, even when we're small. So on the left, there's a picture of the new director of the Cohocton Library looking at some storage space upstairs. I love that picture because right now it's just storage, but he's thinking to the future. And maybe it's going to be an art gallery or we don't know. But he's a very forward-thinking person, so I'm excited to see what will happen. On the right, this is the Livonia Public Library. They had an old building. It was a beautiful old library. They expanded very recently and it's a spectacular space now. This is a well thought out, well planned library. It started off just a small old library, 10 years in the making. They collaborated with and built relationships with their town politicians and businessmen. And so when this finally happened, it took a long time, but it was very well planned out. And so I put that picture in because I just think, wow, 10 years of planning and you can really come up with something amazing. And it's an encouragement to everyone to just start planning and thinking about the future. So, any questions or comments? I am so glad you spent the afternoon with me. I'd love to hear some of your ideas.
Thanks, Hope. So we have about 9 minutes for questions. Feel free to type those in the chat box now. I've seen a lot of great discussion while Hope was talking. You guys are doing a lot of great work. Lisa, I believe, mentioned that she hosted a walking tour with a local cemetery. The supervisor, or no, sorry, superintendent led that.
Wow.
Yeah, and then kind of scrolling up, another one said that they did a card program, passive program, with the local senior center where for, I believe, 22 days, local kids could make cards for everyone there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a lot of really great comments.
Neat.
And we'll just give everyone a few minutes to type if they have any questions. Yeah, Lisa Pinella says they moved shelving around and opened up more seating spaces by doing this to make the library a lot lighter.
I love how libraries are becoming spaces for people and not just warehouses for books.
Lisa Lockhart had a question for you. What are your recommendations for working with spaces where shelving isn't a fixed place?
If you can take some of the books off the upper shelves, if it's a tall shelf, that can kind of allow some of the light to go through or lighten up. That's a tricky one. Somebody at the Association of Rural and Small Libraries had a great idea for their bottom shelf. They have storage on the bottom shelf with pretty contact paper or paper in the front so that it looks nice on the bottom shelf, but it's storage for things that the library uses, not for patrons. But it's really hard for people to look at the bottom shelf, so it's kind of wasted space.
Yeah, I also hear that you can use mirrors to make spaces look larger, so I don't know if that helps too. Yeah. Yeah.
Fixed shelving. Fixed
Go
shelving.
ahead, sorry.
Yeah, is something that you might want to plan for the future. Is that something that you want there forever? It may not be. That might be a bigger project.
Right. Danielle says they have a Sudoku board out for people to fill out.
Oh,
That's a great
neat.
idea.
Yeah. Well, that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa said it's holding up the mezzanine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's staying.
Yeah. Elaine, they have a collection of jigsaw puzzles that they put out on a table for people to work on. That's a really great idea. I believe one of our offices here at ALA actually does that as well.
We have table space a lot of times, and when you're at home, that's not necessarily something you have. You can't leave a jigsaw puzzle out because the table may be used for dinner time or you have young kids. So that's a fun thing to do. I've seen libraries have crafting bees, kind of like a sewing bee, but everybody can bring their craft. And if you're doing something like scrapbooking, it's really nice to have a big table to work on, something that you might not be able to do at home very easily.
Rennie asks, says they don't have much space to put up marketing for programs. Does anyone, and this is open to everyone in the chat as well, have any in-house marketing ideas?
I think, I'm not sure if I understand your question, Rennie, but talking up programs often is the most valuable way. Once you build those relationships with your patrons, you know who's going to be interested in what type of program, and just making sure that people who are working at the circulation desk talk up the programs. Nextdoor, is that a website? Yeah. Yeah. Also, Facebook, if you have community Facebook groups, that's a great way to promote your programs. I think that Facebook, sometimes we order people around. We're telling them to come to this and do that and check out this. Some, if our Facebook page becomes more of a conversation, I think people are more open to our suggestions for programs because they know it's a fun place to come visit, not just be told what to do. Really interesting suggestions.
Yeah, I love all the suggestions. One person, and forgive me, the chat's going a little fast, so I can't see them all, said they put their signs under the glass of their checkout counter.
Mm.
So we have about 3 more minutes, and I see a few people are typing. We will let you all finish your thoughts and see if we have any other last minute questions. Using a digital frame and making your advertisement as PowerPoint slides to upload into that, that's a really great idea.
Mm-hmm. One of the libraries in our system has doesn't have a big work area, so when people are preparing for programs like cutting things out and getting the supplies together, they'll do it while they work on the circulation desk. That way, when people come up, they can start talking about the program that's coming up. Uh, yeah, I think doing program prep at the desk is a great way to start a conversation about programs that are coming up. As long as when people come up, you give them your full attention.
Great. Well, it looks like the chat has slowed down. Oh, and as I say that, multiple people start typing. So we'll let you guys finish typing what you're saying. But in the meantime, since we're about out of time, I wanted to say a huge thank you to Hope for this presentation and, of course, to all of you for joining us today. This webinar will be available for viewing on programminglibrarian.org within 24 hours.
Yay! Thanks for coming, everyone. It was fun. Bye.